All right, big hour. Dave Naylor will join us as we get closer to the CFL playoffs. And the Argos, they had it over the weekend. They won. It got a little bit dicey there at the end. Chad Kelly's looking good, though. Argos are looking pretty good. And we'll catch up with the nail gun later on, get his take on the NFL side of things as well. Coming off a pretty wild weekend in the NFL, 2 Monday Nighters tonight. Best bet still to come. Leafs Lightning tonight. Leafs against Columbus tomorrow. World Series starting on Friday. And Chris Johnston will join us here in a moment, get his take on. It sounds like Max Pacioretty will go back into the lineup tonight. Sounds like Reeves will come out, though. You know, where I thought they were going to maybe take Pontus Holmberg out or maybe take Nick Robertson out. Sounds like Reeves will come out and Pacioretty will go in. I've been a little bit surprised. Reeves has not fought yet. And, I thought him and Rempe were going Saturday night. Never happened. I didn't even see a run-in between the two.
Those games have those guys have a different temperature of when this is going to go down and when it's not. Either something egregious has to happen in the early parts of the game, or I don't know. I don't know if they message each other, but there is a code of conduct that determines whether they're going to do business or not. And sometimes if it's just a player's game, they're not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I as much as they like doing that and they enjoy it, I think a lot of the times they're not just going to say we're doing this to do it. You know what I mean? Maybe one guy will say, I want one tonight. I got to get something going. I'm in the dog. I don't know. But I really think they don't just say, we're doing this to do it.
Well, and the Rangers had that other mutant on the ice, too. What was his name? Edstrom or whatever. There was another guy out there who was
guy was 6'8". He was gigantic.
Yeah, there's these guys who are so big, it doesn't look natural when they're out there. That Rempe looks really awkward when he's he's a
stops
big,
and
so
starts
big.
Or it's cumbersome, man. You're like, what's this guy doing? Yet he drives the net. He actually causes some havoc. He does forecheck.
Yeah, he does.
When he gets when he sets his lasers in on a defenseman in the corner, he is going in there as an F1 to finish business.
Yes.
Man.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
And Reeves does the same thing. If Reeves when he's coming in, if you're dumping the puck in his corner, he is going to get a piece of you. And it's up to you to either take 100% of the hit and you're probably in big trouble, or escape if you can.
I will say Reeves has been noticeable for me on a positive side. I think that he's been good on the forecheck, been hard on the wall. He's looked decent. Yeah, he hasn't been super productive, but it wasn't remember the start of his season last year?
Yeah.
He seemed to be on the ice for every goal against. To me, at least has some structure to his game in that fourth line. It still drives me nuts after a goal or anything. Here's that fourth line. I would like to see coaches get away from that. And
they all do it. They're like, we just gave one up. Sneak these guys in. It's shouldn't it be the complete opposite? Or, hey, we scored, a buzz in the building, put the fourth line out there, kill a shift.
I know, but I think Reeves. I don't know how you guys feel. I
think he's played pretty well, and that's why I'm a bit surprised he's coming out again. Assuming it is going to be the case, we don't know that definitively. But Pacioretty, I think, deserves to go back in. But I thought they'd take Holmberg out or Robertson out. One of the two young guys who have been okay, not great. Robertson now hasn't scored, and he had a great opportunity.
I tried to warn everybody who had their pom-poms saying Nick Robertson's dominant, he's this and that. And I do understand secondary power play unit time with those big boys is not a whole lot. It's not. It's tough to make anything happen out there with 15 or 20 seconds. But you're noticing when it's big boy hockey and it's a quality team that has size and speed and they're physical and they know how to separate, the little spinorama plays and the dipsy doodling in the corner, do you know what it accomplishes? Nothing.
Well, through 5 games, nothing. All right, CJ will join us here in a moment. Do you want me to rifle through my 10-pack here? I feel like this is disrespectful. I'm going to go so fast. But, it's 10 teams that just are not winning the Stanley Cup this year.
Yeah, and we're not saying, we're just, you're saying
it's not
they
can't make the playoffs. It's not that a couple of these won't make the playoffs. Okay. Well, I'm not saying it's not make the playoffs. That is not what we're discussing here.
You know what? I misunderstood because in my mind, I'm like, I know he's going to say Ottawa. It's not
it's
making
not
the playoffs.
Ottawa. Ottawa's not on my 10. They're not on my 10.
Okay.
They're not on my 10.
The Stanley Cup.
And this is the Stanley Cup. This is why, again, anyone that's going to go at you noodles and say Hayes is a loser or an idiot, you just look them in the eye and say, "Are you serious? You think you're winning a Stanley Cup?" For me, do that.
And by the way, you're not
behalf.
counting
FaceTime
them
me.
out of the playoffs.
No,
you're just
I'm not
saying
saying they
this
can't make the
year they're
playoffs.
not
Okay.
winning the Stanley
Listen,
Cup.
I want to
winning
hear
the
them.
Cup, all right?
Let us organically listen to the list,
Okay.
and then we'll have our reaction.
Let me
That's
get a
it.
rapid fire 5 out of the way, okay? And you guys respond if I'm wrong on this. San Jose, Anaheim, Chicago, Columbus, Montreal. Hate to break it to you, Habs fans, Montreal's included in this first 5. You're not winning the Stanley Cup. Quite frankly, none of them are making the playoffs. That's
fair.
what I'm willing to say.
You
Those 5
cannot
aren't making the
argue
playoffs.
with any of those 5 teams.
But to win the Cup, none of them are winning the Stanley Cup.
none
Those,
are.
I think you're not out of line whatsoever with those 5.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You're not out of line.
Yeah.
Well, in my opinion,
Yeah.
I mean, we're all allowed.
Hey, listen. Maybe Chicago's off to a decent start. The Habs, they get a little bit of mojo. Maybe they make a playoff push or something like that.
Again, Hayes,
but I don't
we're not
think so.
talking about the playoffs. There could
Stanley
be
Cup.
It's
Stanley
the
Cup.
Stanley Cup.
They
They can
cannot
win
win
a
and they
couple
won't.
rounds. They're not winning
Yes.
the
They're
Stanley
not
Cup.
winning the Stanley
There's
Cup.
a quick little 5 hit.
There's
for
a
you.
5-pack. And this next 5, I don't believe are winning the Cup either. And I think they're all going to be in trouble to make the playoffs, but that's my opinion. That's not the way that we're operating here. I don't attach that opinion to you guys.
Okay.
Philadelphia. And I know they were on the
Yeah.
verge of making the playoffs last year, and they had a really good start. They have been pretty vocal about this, like rebuild, retool. They're trying to figure out what they're doing in net. They're going to play Michkov a ton. You know, I kind of like what they could be building there and where they're going. I like some of their players. I love Owen Tippett. Morgan Frost is like a player now in the league. Like Morgan has shown up and he's a player.
Yeah.
Yeah, good player.
But they're not winning a Stanley Cup, right?
Yeah,
Like Philly's
fair.
not winning. The hockey club, Noodles. Shout out to Utah. You're in Utah, Salt Lake City. There's still more Arizona than they are Utah. I just have to call a spade a spade. The Utah Hockey Club is not winning the Stanley Cup.
I'm fine with that because you clarified playoffs.
Could
as
make the
to cup.
playoffs. I don't think they will personally. You think they will?
Right.
You think they got a chance?
No, I think they have a chance. And I said this, and I believe this. I think they might have one of these seasons where it's like Seattle did a couple years ago.
Yep.
They kind of get lost in the shuffle, and you're looking at like this team isn't.
They're off to
cooling
a
off.
great
They keep
start.
going.
Great start.
And I'll lay eyes on them tomorrow, and
Yep.
I'll give you guys the feedback. But I don't disagree with you. I don't.
Not winning
and
a
even
cup.
We had Bill Armstrong on last week, wasn't it? He was talking about rebuild and all of that.
Got to
of
keep
stuff.
positive mojo. They've had injuries on the back end already.
Yeah.
That's a struggle for them. They're down a couple of everyday defensemen. That's
No
going to be a
disrespect
fight.
Arizona.
Utah. It's Utah. The hockey club. We love the hockey club. Number, I guess, 7 here. The Buffalo Sabres are not winning the Stanley Cup.
I thought they would have been in your first 5-pack.
Yeah, they're struggling, man. I think they're better than the way they've been playing personally.
I think they are. I think they're a better team than what they've shown, but right now all we judge is on how they've played.
Yeah.
2-4-1. So
Yeah,
they're,
like Dylan Cousins, a lot of people are buzzing, like, what's going on here? And
you know what, though? Honestly, I hate this. I don't know how you guys sending any team to Europe to start the year. I'm sorry. I
But
hate
Jersey
it.
started okay. Jersey, it hasn't really
I know,
affected them.
But it just jams you up. I
agree.
hate it.
I agree. All right, Buffalo at 7, or at 8, I guess. Number 9, the Detroit Red Wings are not winning the Stanley Cup. Not with what's going on in net there. I didn't understand their offseason.
I'm really glad this hasn't missed the playoffs. I'm really glad.
Dude, I don't think they're making the playoffs either. I said over the offseason, I have no idea why they brought Kane back and signed Tarasenko. Like, that to me made no sense. And, like, who did they just waive? They just waived someone with some serious cash. I was reading about it last week. Like, Detroit is in a they're not a good team. They're not well built. Ville Husso, that's who it was. Rick Clouseau.
Yeah.
They basically now someone had to. They signed 4 guys, and he's been. I understand
he's
that,
been
but
out.
But they acquired him, Noodles, thinking from St. Louis, this is going to be our guy. Like that's
They did.
and it obviously hasn't worked.
Signed him. Yeah, they signed him a couple of years ago, and he's been out for 18 months. He has to go play. Like he's missed games. He's got to go play. Cam Talbot and Alex Lyon are their guys right now.
Right.
And they need to play better.
And that's
but
not going to cut it for a cup. Maybe the playoffs.
for
You
a
guys
cup.
might be okay
Yeah.
with it. I don't think Detroit's making the playoffs personally, but again, that's an aside. Okay, here's
I think
one.
they'll be in the mix.
You think
But
they'll
I
be in
don't
the
know
mix?
if they'll make it.
Here comes.
Well, this isn't a beauty, but it's just, again, I think it's an honest assessment, but they're off to an unbelievable start. Calgary. I have Calgary. They're not winning the Stanley Cup. Calgary Flames not winning the Cup. 4-0-1, unreal start. Your boy Dustin Wolf, you've been talking about him for years. He's looked great. I credit Kadri. I credit their vets. They're playing really, really well. I'm sorry. It's been 5 games. I'm not changing where I was.
No need to apologize. I think everyone in Calgary
I could have waited
agree.
until next week, but I got Calgary in the 10th.
I was just going to say, you can't just wait another week to
can't do it. I'm a man of integrity.
Let these guys have a nice start and let people live their lives.
Hazy, I think you make it interchangeable. You make it interchangeable. If you see a team get hot and you see some signs, you can remove them from the list and bring another team in.
Calgary and the hockey club are not going to have a better 5-game stretch than they did to start the year. So if I got them in now, I can't picture a scenario where I flip them. There are teams that were honorable mentions. And they'll be coming, believe me. They'll be listed very soon.
Here's my prediction. One of these teams, Buffalo, Detroit. Did you put the list up again, please, if we can?
Throw it up there, Joe.
One of these teams, we might actually interchange out. If Detroit gets their act together, if Buffalo gets their act together, you might pull them off the list. Not just to
win
try
the
and
cup,
win the cup,
though, Noodles.
But for somebody else to go in. My point is, Brian.
Okay.
For somebody else, you might look at somebody else that has a bad week or whatever and go, "There's zero chance that the Kraken's going to win. I'm pulling Buffalo off that list and putting the Kraken in there."
Well,
something like that.
I'll probably just
I think
add
that's
to the
too
list.
fluffy for Hayes.
I'll be adding to the list. Is what I'll be doing. All right, here's Chris.
Then it'll be our job.
You guys can fight back. You guys push back. And guess what? Every team in the league but one will be listed on this by the end of it. Here's Chris Johnston, our TSN Hockey Insider, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. What's happening, CJ?
Not much, guys. You got Tampa on that list, or where do you have that?
No,
right now?
Tampa's not on the list. The Leafs are not on the list.
We're all positive, CJ. We're all positive. We just came up with a list of teams that will not win the Stanley Cup. That's what we do, bud.
Yeah. There's 10 of them.
2 weeks into the season, and half the league doesn't have a shot.
Yeah, listen, basically they should put it up for sale right now. Be a seller at the deadline. It's been determined. This is who you are. This is where it's going. But these two teams, the Leafs and the Lightning, I think are probably on the other end of the spectrum. I mean, clearly, based on what they've done recently. And I know people are going to say, hey, why aren't the Leafs on here? The Leafs never win. I get it. They may show up at some point. I'm not sure when. But this feels like a pretty big game for early in the season, doesn't it, CJ?
Yeah, it does, and it's kind of nice. It's sort of center stage with it being the only NHL game tonight, and neither team at this point, down at the skate this morning, shies away from the fact that they played the playoffs a couple times, and being division rivals, that I think it does have a little extra juice to it, and especially with the way the Lightning have started the year, I actually sensed a little bit of. They feel that they've been overlooked a little bit maybe in some of the early season chat or maybe the preseason chat about, who is going to do what and who the contenders are. I think that they have maybe a little bit more something to prove in their minds this year, after obviously that run of going, 3 straight years to the Cup, but now they've lost twice in the first round consecutively. And so, I sense a little bit of fire or chip on their shoulder more than I have in the past being around the Lightning.
Where does Kucherov stand for you in terms of, if we're talking all-time great Russian players, I feel like Ovi's got the crown, and I think justifiably should. I think Alex Ovechkin should be at the top of that list. Does Kucherov have a chance to fight him for that crown, to be a top 3 Russian player ever? I mean, where does he stand on the Russian meter in particular, Nikita Kucherov?
Oh, I think he's definitely got a chance to be certainly top 3 of Russian NHL players. I guess the question is how much longevity is he going to have? That's a little bit of the unknown here, but we're talking about a guy who's won scoring titles and he's won an MVP. Actually had my number 1 Hart vote last year. I know he didn't end up winning the award, but I think he certainly had a claim to, some serious consideration to that award last season, and he's picked right up where he left off. I mean, last year was 100 assists he had. Now he's already got 7 goals to start this year off. And obviously maybe a little different dynamic on the Lightning. Stamkos did a lot of the goal scoring for them and maybe giving a little bit more of a shooter's mindset to Kucherov. I know their power play, like the Leafs, hasn't really gotten going to where they're used to it just yet, but I see they're going to be looking for some different options on that unit because so much of what they used to do for years ran through 91 there in the dot. So, I think the sky's the limit for Kucherov. I certainly think he's among the best players in the league over the last number of years, and he might be right at the top to start this season because he's been on fire.
Hayes, just to interrupt, I think you might have your list maybe next week or the following week, because I think there'll be people that'll say Fedorov. I think there's people that'll say Datsuk. I think people say Pavel Bure. There'll be Ovechkin. But I think Kucherov has pushed himself into those conversations with how well he's played. Now, there's generational and old school, be Tretiak and all that. But you might have a 10-pack there. You might Malkin. You might
Malkin's
have,
on it for sure, man.
Marianov, the fine gentleman.
Vasilevsky, man. How about him?
I'm just saying, you might have created a 10-pack there of all time, which would be pretty exciting. But, CJ, I wanted to go, where are we going to start? When are you going to start getting some chatter on trade and all of that? I've heard some rumblings of teams already, sniffing around. Is it too early, or is it just managers are always proactive?
Well, I think that certainly a lot of teams are starting to already have an idea of what their needs might be. I just don't see a lot of places yet where teams are kind of trading players away. I mean, if there's one, it's the one located closest to us here. The Leafs might be forced into a situation where they're making a move at some point in the next few weeks just because of the cap picture and the players they have on long-term injured reserve right now. As those guys get healthy, something might have to give. But for the most part around the league, I don't know that there's a lot of teams yet in a selling mind frame or England guys out there, but certainly, I think GMs and front offices understand their weaknesses, understand the areas that they're going to want to address, as the season goes along. And, probably as we get into November, there is a GM's meeting around the Hall of Fame weekend. I think that you will start to maybe get some of the sense of where those things are headed. At this point, it is probably a little premature to get the hot stove fired up at full blast anyway.
CJ, if you had to describe John Tavares' feelings toward his situation with the Maple Leafs, where he's slotted, who he's playing with, if you could describe his feelings about that in one word, what would it be?
It's a tough one. I mean, I think John, honestly, I think he's a team guy, man. I'm sure that like any player, he's going to want to play more. He's in a contract here himself. He's going to want the opportunities to be producing and all those types of things. But, I think at this stage, it really is all about trying to be part of a winner for Tavares. I mean, we saw the way he handled the whole captaincy handoff. I think in that situation, he probably handled that as gracefully as you could expect someone to do so. He really wants to be a Maple Leaf long term. He's hoping his next contract signed here in Toronto. And so, he's not one to rock the boat. So, one word, I just think he's a we before me guy. I don't think that he's the sort that would be getting too bad out of shape about things. And he's had kind of a strange start to the year. I mean, he missed a game already with an illness. He said, he told Masters he lost 8 pounds because he was so sick. And so I don't think he's even personally up to kind of the level he would like to be early on. And so, I think he'll ride with it for now. And I don't see that being much of an issue. I mean, we'll see how things fall with the power play. I mean, to me, I still like having him on the top unit if they end up shuffling things around here with the way, that unit hasn't really been as effective as you've seen in the past. But, I think for him, it's really about doing what's best for the Leafs versus worried about what's best for him individually.
With Chris Johnston, our TSN Hockey Insider, what's your read on Joseph Woll and his production this week?
Well, I think we're going to see him play, which is a good sign. Obviously, a couple weeks into the year, 2 weeks ago on Wednesday, we thought he was starting in Montreal until he wasn't, and so I think that's been a bit of a frustrating situation for him personally. But the fact that he's a full participant in practice, Berube left open the possibility he plays tomorrow night in Columbus. I think if that doesn't end up happening, we're still going to see him at some point here in the next few days, and so he's just got to get in there and be healthy and have a run of good play. I mean, if he's learned anything since he's been out, it's Anthony Stolarz has handled the job very capably in his absence. Dennis Hildeby gave the Leafs a good game when he started in New Jersey in the second game of the season. He as much as he's got security because he signed that contract extension in the off season. I mean, he's going to be in a battle for playing time, and the number one part of that, of course, he's got to be healthy enough to play the games and to be available to the coaching staff. So it's all positive with him right now. I think the Leafs exercised a little bit extra caution with only 2 games last week in terms of just giving him a bit more time to ramp up. But wouldn't surprise me at all if we saw him start tomorrow night in Columbus. And
it sounds like Pacioretty's going back in tonight, and Ryan Reeves will be the one coming out. Are you surprised by that?
Not really. I think Reeves is a guy that will play a little bit based on opposition and maybe the anticipation if there's someone on the other side that the Leafs might be worried about in terms of a fight or something like that. Give Reeves credit. I think the fourth line's actually been pretty good for Craig Berube. I mean, that's something he likes to use maybe more than Sheldon Keefe did. Certainly runs at 5-on-5 his lineup, a little more consistently 1 through 4. And I think the Leafs feel that they have some options right now that they don't want anyone to sit too long if they can avoid it. And so it's going to be in a bit of a rotation with Pacioretty having missed the last 2 games. And I think that they view, quite honestly, the depth they have right now as a positive thing. And so those are the 2 oldest forwards on the team, I believe. And so it wouldn't surprise me if both of them are kind of in and out here as long as everyone stays healthy, just because there's more healthy skaters right now than there are positions to play each night.
So, a couple weeks into the season, a lot of people are picking Edmonton to win the Cup this year. I think Florida obviously was the Cup winner last year. If you're doing a power rankings right now based on what you've seen so far, who would you give the top spot to? Who do you think is the best team in the league right now?
I probably got to go with Dallas. I watched that game on the weekend. They played Edmonton on Saturday afternoon, and obviously those 2 teams were in the Western Conference Final last year. Dallas has been a perennial top team. I think they're probably the number 1 spot. I mean, it's just a little bit harder for me to handicap who to nominate in the East. I think the East is a stronger conference right now, but because of that, it's a little bit more of a jump ball in terms of are we spotlighting the Rangers? Are we spotlighting Boston? Is it Tampa? Is it Toronto? Carolina? I mean, there's other teams that are kind of in the mix there. But for me, Dallas has probably started the best. Ottinger's playing great. Obviously, buoyed by his new contract there. And I just think that they're a deep lineup that they keep introducing intriguing young players. Stankoven's up with them now. Wyatt Johnston, took a big step last year and looks like he's going to be a big part of the future. And they still have a lot of the players that have led their success in previous years there still. So, it seems to me that Dallas is probably number 1 on that power rankings. But, I haven't abandoned Edmonton even with the tough start they had. I know they've won a couple games now, maybe remove some of the stench of that first week of the season. But I think the Oilers will be right in the mix when the games really matter in April and May.
Do you make anything about the Winnipeg Jets start and them being 5-0? And I think, are they flying under the radar? Do they look good to you? What do you make of them?
Yeah, I mean, they're probably painful under the radar, especially since they had 110 points last year. I mean, this isn't exactly new for them. I mean, they went out in the first round last year, and so I think that similarly, I mean, no one forgets about the Leafs, but the Leafs, all the success they've had in all these regular seasons, it's obviously doesn't carry over, doesn't carry weight because of what's happened in the playoffs. I think Winnipeg might be in a similar spot, but they've been good to start the year. Just maybe not a sexy team in a lot of ways, but really effective. They got 3 lines that are humming along, and obviously Connor Hellebuyck's a heck of a goaltender, someone who's won the Vezina Trophy a couple times and is among the elite players of that position in the game. So I don't have them as in the top flight of whatever if we're organizing teams by cup expectancy or likelihood, but they would be in the second group right below that if I was having to rank everyone. So I think that they're certainly in the mix, and they've credit to them for a really hot start.
Should be a fun one tonight. Enjoy the game, and we'll do it again soon. Thank you, CJ.
All right, boys. Sounds good.
Chris Johnston joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. All right, we have sent Al's brother out somewhere in the city with a pair of Leaf tickets. Every week we're doing this. He's somewhere in the city of Toronto with a pair of Leaf tickets. And you have to guess where he's hiding for your chance to win them. Are you guys ready for the first clue of the week?
Yes,
Al's brother in a new location.
I pick out where he's from, where he is. Go ahead.
All right, Leaf fans, we've got another pair of tickets to give away. This time it is to a Leafs Kraken game on October 31st. Little Halloween game. It's not a trick. It's a treat from us to you. But you've got to figure out where I am this week. Here is your Monday clue. This place in Toronto was once featured in a music video.
Okay.
Dude.
Music video. What do you have?
You know how many music videos have been shot in Toronto?
Yes,
CN
thousands.
Tower?
Thousands.
Thousands and millions.
Thousands and millions. I agree. Not just thousands, millions.
Yes.
I mean, when you think of Toronto skyline, don't you think of that? I don't know.
Could be a CN Tower.
Didn't Drake sitting on there one time?
Yeah, but I don't know if he
video?
did that. Did he do that for a video? I guess he did. I don't know, man. I mean, it could be Casa Loma.
I hope I didn't guess that because we've been guessing them so early. I hope I didn't guess that in the first one.
You might have, Noodles, but it was a total fluke if you did. I mean, ultimately, this could go a million different ways.
And if you did, whoever does the clues, change it to be something else.
I don't think that's a bad clue. Like somewhere a music video was shot. I mean, come on. How are we supposed to know that on day one? Tune in tomorrow for another clue. And the first caller through this Friday with the correct location wins a pair of tickets to see the Leafs take on the Kraken on Halloween night, October 31st. Leafs and Kraken, neither team in my bottom 10 for Cup contention.
There you go.
Both of them possibly Cup contenders. Who knows? All right, 2 games in the NFL tonight. We'll get to that. NFL through 6.5, almost 7 weeks. CFL at the end of the road. What's going to happen with the CFL playoffs right around the corner? The Nail Gun will join us. Our best bet still to come as well. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, Best Bets brought to you by FanDuel. Still to come a little bit later in the hour. Don't forget to make your prediction for First Up's Monday Night Jackpot. Head to tsn1050.ca and predict the score and winning team of one of tonight's games, Ravens versus Bucks or Chargers Cardinals. You only need to predict one game, and you have until 7 p.m. to make your prediction. If you're right, you can win the jackpot. It currently sits at $250 because someone picked the right score and the winner last week. So if no one wins, we'll add another $250 to the pot for next week. All right. I kind of like, again, Chargers tonight. I feel like Chargers 23-17. I like Chargers 23-17, and I lean Ravens, but I think it's a closer one. I think the Bucs might cover this spread. Ravens like 31-28. Great ball game.
Dude, the Cardinals could sneak up and put some points up, man.
They can. They absolutely can. That's why we got 2 games. And I don't really get this whole, double shot on Monday night.
I don't either.
They did it for a couple weeks.
Dude, the ones on the same time, it's insane to have 2 games at the same time.
And now they're later. Like tonight it's 8:15 and 9 p.m. Where before it was 7:30 and 8:15. Now they've reversed it.
Dude, it's pretty simple. Do a 7 and a 10 if you want to do it.
That's right.
It's not that hard.
That's right. Do the Bucks and Ravens at 7:30 and do the West Coast game at 10. Perfect.
How hard is that for someone to figure out?
I don't know. I guess ESPN's the one that's making the calls. And, here's our TSN football insider, Dave Naylor. Are you a proponent of 2 Monday Night Football games, Dave, or where do you stand on that?
I'm going with the O-Dog on this one. I don't understand why you're going to play simultaneous. How weird it is when you're actually covering one of these games on a prime time to realize there's another game going on.
I know.
And we made a little miscalculation. The Bills had a Monday nighter 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we were 7:15 start. Yeah, let's drive home. But we forgot we don't do our TV duties until after the second game is done. So we're driving home at 2:30 in the morning going, misguided decision on this one.
Yeah, that one stings. That one stings now, Gun. But what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're a professional. I'm sure you figured
Absolutely.
it out.
We did indeed. Yeah.
As you should. Trying to get a read on the best team in the NFL. The Chiefs are 6-0, yet Mahomes is not statistically doing anything. The guy's throwing interceptions, multiple interceptions every single week. Yet it's tough to look past them because of their history and because Mahomes in the times when he needs to get it done, he's going to get it done, right? That's kind of the reality with him. I think they deserve to be at the top of the league. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, look, they haven't lost since, last December, so and that's why to see them as an underdog, no matter what the stats and the numbers and the matchups, and they obviously on a neutral field in the Super Bowl last year, they were basically a push, right, into overtime. But I think, this is part of what Patrick Mahomes has figured out, that he doesn't have to be a highlight machine all game long. He needs to be a highlight machine 3 or 4 times a game. That and the other part of this is that it seemed like for a while the game was skewing in such a direction that it was all about quarterbacks. Now, look, quarterbacks are the most important players in the field. It's why they're the highest paid. But it just felt like so much of who won and lost in the NFL was purely about who had the quarterback who could put up the big numbers. And we've seen a trend away from that the last couple of years. Even the guys that are the big arm guys. I mean, Josh Allen threw for 300 yards the other day, but when's the last time he did that? And you look at, Justin Herbert, look at his prop numbers. It's under 200, right? He went over 237 as the season high last week. And I think the Chiefs were kind of the leading edge on this last year. They won because they had a great defense. They won because Mahomes could make magic at the right time. They had a good run game. It wasn't just, we got the best quarterback in the league, and he's going to go out and do amazing things for 60 minutes, and that's how we're going to win. That's not really the formula for success in the NFL right now. The thing that, again, it kind of adds to Mahomes' lore is that so many of these games are close, and you figure one of them is going to get them, and yet it hasn't happened.
Whatever that recipe is, Naylor, do you think that team down in Buffalo, I mean, they look so good in their victories. They've clubbed a couple teams this year. But whatever recipe that is, can you have a feeling that there's a chance that they could possibly put something together that could be special in Buffalo?
I absolutely think, because here's a big part of it. The Bills' tough part of their schedule is over. Like this was the part that, if you'd said at the start of the year, the Bills will get to 5-2, everybody would have taken that. And yesterday was 4, and it was really the first 6 games. So I think, where you're at Baltimore, at Houston, at Miami, with Tua. Those are 3 games you could look at, and reasonably they could have been 3 losses. Yeah, and they won the Miami game, obviously lost in Houston, got killed in Baltimore. But they're in Seattle this week. Then they come home to Miami, and I guess Tua's going to be back. But look at the division. They're 5-2. They got 2.5 game lead over everybody. And the Jets. You tell me who was going to chase the Bills in the AFC East right now. So the division looks like a lock. And again, it's hard thing to say after week 7, but they certainly have the biggest lead of any division team in the NFL right now. And what's the one thing that's been limiting this team this year? They can run the ball really well. They can pass protect. Josh Allen has 10 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Now, he's thrown some interception-worthy balls, I got to say, but he has not thrown an interception. And what's the one thing these guys couldn't do was throw the ball when everybody knew they had to, right? Stretch the field. Have that guy who's going to draw double coverage. And on 4, what Sean McDermott called 4 teaching days, I mean, Amari Cooper looked pretty good. 4 catches, average is about 17 yards a catch, which is what he averaged last year when he was with Cleveland, is his highest average yards per catch of his career. He had his highest yardage total last year. And this is a guy 1 year removed from basically his best season. And I think there's talent among the Bills receivers. And I think a lot of that talent is going to be able to flourish now that Amari Cooper is going to draw some attention. I think Amari Cooper and Dalton Kincaid and Khalil Shakir are going to be the kind of breadwinners on this offense the rest of the way. And the defense keeps getting healthier. Man, Terrell Bernard played a great game yesterday. And Sean McDermott always figures out defense. I mean, you can have some issues with his in-game decisions and some of the strategies like we've seen at different times. But, man, he always figures out defense. So, yeah, I do think the Bills, the Jets were the division favorites on the betting market. Longest non-playoff streak in the NFL. Bills 4 years in a row, not the favorites. They are now.
You just said something, and we talked about it earlier, and it's like a statement now in the NFL, and it's such an indictment. When people mention the Dolphins with or without Tua, it's like without Tua, Dolphins is basically the worst team that's ever been assembled.
Unwatchable.
With Tua, it's like this amazing, greatest show on turf part 2. Without Tua, they should not be in the league. It's so embarrassing for them.
You're right, and it's because he has the skill set and the style of play that team is set up to play that is very, very difficult to replicate, right? He throws the ball quicker than any quarterback in the NFL.
I know, but Naylor, without him, they can't win any game at all. That's crazy.
That was the one. New England they played a couple weeks ago that was like the awful worst game. No, it was Tennessee.
Horrendous.
So they played Tennessee. My God, that was a terrible game.
Yeah. And look at yesterday. It was a terrible game. I mean, Tyreek Hill is a decoy. He doesn't catch balls.
Dude, he's going to go nuts if that keeps
Terrible.
up.
Well, I know.
It's It is it is a shocking difference. And again, I don't they're talking about him playing this week potentially. So the Bills may see him again, but I just think at this point, Miami looks like their souls have been crushed by the last month.
No kidding. With Dave Naylor at TSN Football Insider. So the Canadian Football League, we're into the final week here, and then it's go time. The Argos, Chad Kelly, he's had a very up and down season. I mean, that's putting it lightly, considering he's suspended for the first half of the year. And there's a bit of a learning curve, him getting back into it. He knew the offense, he knew the coaching staff, but he didn't look overly sharp early on. He has gotten increasingly better as the year has gone on, and they're going to hold on to that 2 seed. They're going to play a home playoff game. Like, what do you think the chances are that the Argos can go on a serious run here in the CFL?
I've always thought they were the sleeper sort of this season because the first 9 games of the year, when they went 5-4, they basically kept their heads above water with special teams and defense. I mean, there was basically no vertical passing game. It's sort of distributing the football into the hands of playmakers, the early levels, the first and second levels of the defense, and that's how they got by. And you're right, Chad been inconsistent. He looks like a guy who missed training camp in the first half of the season for most of it. But it's starting to come around, and you really saw the vertical passing game explode against Ottawa in that first half, when they put up 28. And I thought, look, if Chad Kelly was far and away, they had the best offense, he was the best player in the league last year, most outstanding player. If he could become 75% of what he was last year, and their defense and special teams could play 75% as well as it did during the first 9 games of the season, they can win a Grey Cup. And they dominated Ottawa until the game didn't matter. I mean, the score is one of the weirdest final 5 minutes of a game you'll ever see. Put up 25 points in the fourth quarter, most of it at the end. But they dominated that game. And then it's one trip to Montreal, and Montreal has not looked like Montreal in half a season. I mean, I know they got the best record in the league, but if you look at their metrics the first half of the season before Cody Fajardo's injury compared to what it's been since, they've had a real depletion of the receiving core as well with injuries. They're beatable. And I got to think that the Argos, who got spanked, in front of 27,000, which, by the way, you don't say that often about an Argo game. Mm-hmm. There were 27,000 people to watch them get blasted at Montreal, at home last year to Montreal. So I got to think that's about as much motivation as you can possibly imagine if you're going to be going on the road to play that one game at Montreal and try to even the score and get to a Grey Cup. So, yeah, I do think the Argos, it's weird about the organization. They're better as a line in the weeds kind of creep up on you team than they are as front runners. I think they proved that last year, and this is another one of those teams.
Nail Gun, where are you at with the future of Nathan Rourke as Vernon Adams Jr. will get the start?
Wow, this has been such a weird year. It's strange for me to think that I actually was at Giants camp with Nathan Rourke this season. Not 2 years ago. It feels like 2 years ago. Look, honestly, I think in retrospect, the best decision for everyone, for Nathan Rourke, for the BC Lions, for Vernon Adams, would have been for him to play it out this year and just, stay by the phone and hope that you get a call and you get on a practice roster or another roster. We know what happens with quarterback injuries. When you try to go back in the middle of the season, and this really, and Noodles, as a former athlete, you maybe will appreciate this. I thought in the interview that Farhan Lalji did with Nathan Rourke last week on sort of the day it was announced that he wasn't going to start, he just looked mentally shot. He looked like a guy who's been on 5 teams in 2 leagues, and that's who he is. And I think it's also evident that not that the team is anti-Rourke. I'm not saying that by any means, but Vernon Adams, it was his team last year. It was his team for the first 8 or 9 games of this season, and I think the players wanted to see Vernon Adams able to finish this thing. And he goes out and plays his behind off last week, and now he's going to get the playoff start. If they go on a run here and win it, now you've got an interesting situation because it has been a foregone conclusion that they can't keep both of these guys. They're going to trade VA. Nathan Rourke is the franchise guy. But if Vernon Adams leads you to a Grey Cup and looks a lot better than Nathan Rourke, and I want to say, I don't think Rourke's been terrible. I think there's been a lot of kind of undue criticism of him. Everybody's got 2022 in their head, as I do too. It's hard to forget. It's one of the greatest seasons the quarterback's ever had in the CFL. But, man, you come back from the NFL after being in 3 or 4 different playbooks, and I think there's a bit of a death of a dream for Nathan Rourke as well, coming back from the NFL. He may never get back there. That's what he grew up dreaming of. That's what it's always been about. And I just think the mental fatigue that he's gone through has really played into, the way he's played football as well.
What the hell happens next year, Naylor? Is it like Nathan Rourke, it's your team, go nuts? Like, how does it play out?
I mean, he's got a contract to be the highest paid player in the league, so right now.
It's obviously going to be him.
I think so, and that's where he wants to be. I mean, he told me that when we were at Giants camp. We talked about it that day. He absolutely made it clear that if he went back to the CFL, he wanted to go to BC. His comfort with the staff, his family's out there. He's originally from Victoria. I mean, why wouldn't you want to live in Vancouver, right? And the owner there, it's like first class all the way. That's where he wants to be. He never, ever hid that. And yet with Vernon Adams doing what he was doing, that is going to be that's going to be a very, very, depending on what happens here in the next month. But, if the BC Lions somehow win the Grey Cup on home field in Vancouver with people going out of their minds and Vernon Adams holding the trophy above his head, you really going to trade him a month later? I don't know. I think that was the plan, but at this point, I do not know.
All right. Well, let's get through the playoffs before we start worrying about what's going to happen next season. Enjoy the Monday Nighters and the end of the regular season. The CFL, it's almost playoff time. It's going to be a fun few weeks coming up. Thank you, Dave.
Hey, my pleasure. Guys said keep the eyes on the other Rourke, too, when he comes back from his hand injury, man. That's going to be a story to follow by the time we get to late November, December when he comes back.
For sure, Curtis Rourke lighting up the Big Ten, man. That's pretty significant down there. Very significant.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care, guys. See ya.
Dave Naylor, a TSN Football Insider. Yeah, Nathan's brother's been crushing it.
He looks exactly like him.
Identical.
There, because I had no idea what the hell he was talking about. I was like,
Curtis,
know what, Naylor? We're watching that guy.
Curtis Rourke, we're watching him. Yeah,
it's like his twin. Like he looks exactly
like him. They look identical.
Like him.
I think he's taller than Nathan.
Is he going to be like dialed in NFL quarterback, like starting in the league and become a megastar? That would drive his brother insane.
Well, I mean, I don't know. He's playing in Indiana, and they got off to a pretty good start. That's not a football factory, though. That's more of a basketball school. But his numbers have been phenomenal, and he transferred. He was at, I believe, Ohio, which is where Nathan went to school, and then he transferred to Indiana, and they're in the Big Ten. So facing, like, legit teams, but he's got that thumb injury. He's going to be out for quite some time, which stings. But we'll see. Yeah, the Argos, they're playing pretty well. Pretty well. They're in a pretty good spot. They're going into the playoffs. We'll see what they've got. Come back with our best bets brought to you by FanDuel and Tee Up Leafs Lightning one more time. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, best bets powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. A couple of moneyline plays on the football games tonight. Ravens, Chargers, moneyline parlay. Paying plus 177. I think the Chargers win and cover. I think the Ravens win. I think it'll be a tighter game, though. I could see the 4.5 being a bit dicey. So I'll go with the Ravens on the money line. Ravens, Chargers, money line paying plus 177. Today's best bets powered by FanDuel. FanDuel is the home of popular parlays this NFL season. Please play responsibly. 18 plus, physically located in Ontario. Leafs Lightning tonight. Reeves out of the lineup. Pacioretty in. You see Liljegren came out. Timmins went back in over the weekend. Like, that's probably going to be a story, I would think, throughout the year. And Stolarz starting tonight. Probably Joseph Woll tomorrow in Columbus.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, see how it goes. Like Tampa, this is a good test. Both really good teams and want to be fighting. These are big points, even though it's October, but it is still
everything counts. Everything counts.
Measure. Yeah, an early measuring stick for sure.
Tampa will be ready to play too. They don't typically go into Ottawa and lose hockey games, so they'll be ready to rock.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be a good test. And it's a busy week for the Leafs. Again, they've got a game on Thursday against St. Louis. They got Boston on Monday. They got Winnipeg coming up, who's the hottest team in the league. Like, you got a lot of games over the next 8 nights.
Good teams coming up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, you're going to be tested. And the Leafs are a good team. The other teams know that, too. The Leafs are going to come out, and they're going to play well. I think it'll be a fun game tonight. All right, full breakdown of that tomorrow. We'll have the breakdown of the Columbus game as well. We get the Raptors season right around the corner. They're tipping off midweek this week. We get the World Series on Friday. It's going to be a great week. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes for helping out. We appreciate it. Everyone for tuning in today. TV, radio, podcast, web. We appreciate that. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at
4 p.m.
We'll chat then.